Okay, now we're going to start discussing recruiting. Recruiting is something that's going to happen at the end of each quarter during the year. So not the end of each turn, but the end of each quarter. Now, recruiting, obviously, it's where you're going to get new troops, new cavalry, new artillery, new naval units, but you can also even increase things like your rail points, which allows you to transport higher numbers of troops along your rail system. Now, there are some differences in the way that recruiting is handled for the northern side versus the southern side, but it's the same basic principle for each side, okay? Now, when the Union recruits troops, their troops are going to appear, they're going to be recruited in one of two cities. They're either going to appear here in Chicago or they're going to appear here in New York, and that's going to depend on what state they're being recruited from. The Union is not the Union, the Confederates are the same way. When they recruit troops, their troops are either going to appear here in Charleston or they're going to appear in Vicksburg, again, depending on what state they are being recruited from. Now, something that you do need to keep in mind, though, is since units only appear in those two cities for each faction, if those cities are occupied by an enemy unit, then you can no longer recruit from the states that feed into them. So the states that feed into Chicago, for example, would all be cut off from recruiting if Chicago was occupied, and the same goes for the rest. Obviously, naval units are going to appear in the naval boxes, but we'll touch on those a little bit more specifically a little bit later on. Now, also, units can appear in the border states because you can recruit from the border states like Kentucky here, but they have some restrictions on when you're able to recruit for them. So you can only recruit from a border state if you occupy it. And if you occupy it with your troops and you do recruit from there, then the units that are recruited from there will appear there. So they are not going to appear in Chicago or New York or the others. They're going to appear in that state itself. Now I've got us ready to go ahead and pull up the recruit unit tab. So let's click on it here. And this is the tab where you're going to recruit your units and increase your capacity. This is obviously the Union recruiting tab, but the Confederate will be similar to this. Now, one of the differences between the two is the prices. So you see here for the Union side, infantry are $5, cavalry are $7, artillery are $7. These numbers are actually different for the Confederates. Their infantry are only $4, their cavalry are $6, but their artillery is $8. Now we're going to cover the specifics of some of these other units like warships and ironclads, cavalry and artillery in the next video because they do involve some extra resources. But when it comes to recruiting your troops, real easy. You just click here on the icon that you want to recruit. So let's say we want to recruit an infantry unit. We click right there. You see purchased 1, spent $5, and it's taken away from our total. So we had $40. We've now spent $5, and we can just keep clicking on that, left clicking on that to increase it. Or if you click too many times, you can right click on it to reduce it back down. So you see here, we've recruited a couple of infantry units. And let's say this is what we want to recruit. We can click accept and they will appear in one of those two cities. So you see here it popped up new federal units. They both appeared in the top, and then the Confederates have also done their recruiting as well. They purchased some units and some blockade runners. Now, like I said, recruiting some of the others like cavalry and artillery, naval units, this does involve things like production factors. We're going to cover that in the next video.